The Book of Twilight. First story, Liwei, the Snow Ginseng Root. A tale of the daughter of the moon goddess, in which Liwei and Xingyan seek out the snow ginseng root. Night had faded, the dawn streaked with ash and rose. The lanterns were still lit as I strode towards Xingyan's chamber. I knocked upon the door firmly, my guilt at waking her vanishing when a curse from within broke the silence. I grinned, imagining her scowl, part of me relishing her ire. "What is it, Liwei? It's still dark. Can't it wait?" "No, you shouldn't sleep until noon anyway," I replied unsympathetically. "Just once," she said with feeling, her voice muffled through the wood. "I would like to sleep till noon." Life in the palace began early each day, whether for an attendant or for the emperor. It had been so since I was a child, each waking hour filled with lessons, the tutors and subjects changing over time, though the schedule remained fixed. My mother told me it was training for when I took the throne, and I was glad to now have a companion, a friend in Xingyan. Our mornings were spent studying in the Chamber of Reflection, while afternoons found us on the field with the soldiers, training the sword, fighting, and archery. This was where Xingyan had first learned to shoot, and she had outpaced me soon after. Any blow to my pride was outweighed by the joy of watching a friend rise to accomplish what lay in their blood. Our days were full, yet most evenings she would remain in my room after our meal, even when I curbed my selfish impulse to ask her to stay. During the nights when she sensed I was troubled, she would play a song on her flute, better than any of the trained musicians at court. But the times I most cherished were when she just sat there, reading or conversing with me. Such simple things lent a semblance of normality to our relationship, and I had hoped it would never change. How quiet my days had been before she came into my life. It was why I had begun painting as a way to fill the void. In Xingyan, I'd inadvertently found my favorite subject, yet I rarely allowed myself the indulgence of painting her, for she already lingered far too long in my mind. When had it begun, this ceaseless desire to be close to her? I had always enjoyed her company, right from our first encounter. Her candor and wit amused me, coupled with her generous yet stubborn heart. She possessed the skill of a warrior along with the mind of a scholar, and her magic was as fierce as her ambition, though I was unsure what drove her when she cared little for position or title. Lately, I'd found myself devising excuses to keep her with me longer in the evenings, the rare time that belonged to us alone. My pleasure in her company began to give way to more unsettling emotion, a desire for more. It would be dangerous should another discern it. If others knew of our connection, they would seek to use it, to control her. I could not thrust her into a den of snakes that was the celestial court, not until I could ensure her safety. While my position conferred great privileges, these came with tethers of their own. Unlike most, my life was not an uncharted sea. I knew my place in this realm and the path I would take. My days, since childhood, were spent in training for the role I would fulfill, to ascend the throne, rule the kingdom, marry someone who would grace the crown. There was already much discussion at court regarding the search for a suitable candidate. An unwelcome thought, for my parents had wed in such an alliance and found little joy in their union. But I would not shirk my duty. There was no place for love when a kingdom was at stake, unless one was prepared to relinquish it. My heart was not mine to give. I must guard myself better, keep my distance from Xingyan, though it was becoming harder to stay away. I could not allow myself to slip again as I had in the celestial market, imagining a carefree life that could never be. A weight sank over me as my thumb stroked the sky-drop tassel by my waist. A gift of friendship, I reminded myself, for that was all we could ever be. Moreover, Xingyan would not be content to remain here, nor should I attempt to keep her in this gilded cage. She should make her own life, not shape herself to mine, entangled by the cords that bound me. In the courtyard of eternal tranquillity, we were shielded from the cares of the celestial court. But that would not last. Once I assumed my duties, our peace would disintegrate. We would be plunged into scrutiny both malicious and unkind. The court would dislike her, someone they could neither read nor use, who would not cave to their demands, and if they could not change her, they would break her. As an uneasiness stirred, I cast aside these fears of an uncertain future. What mattered was the present. Filled with sudden urgency, I rapped the door again. We must leave before the sun rises, I told her, leaning against the door as I prepared for an argument. The door was thrown open. Losing my balance, I lurched forward, gripping the wooden frame as I stumbled into the room. Despite my years of training, she still caught me off guard with ease, which pleased me more than it irked. She stood over me as I straightened, grasping at my scattered dignity. Liwei, what was so important that I had to see it before sunrise? Her smile was a little smug, like she relished making me fall. Don't you want to get out of the palace? I countered, knowing her preference. Her eyes shone brighter than the lanterns outside. Next time, Your Highness, she said teasingly, you should lead with that invitation to gain a warmer reception. How warm? I found myself asking against caution in all sense. Her cheeks flushed as she folded her arms over her chest. Perhaps you would not have found yourself tumbling through the doorway. I let a moment pass. It was more prudent not to press. Was that intentional? I asked instead. Of course. She angled her head up, her mouth curving wider. I was waiting till the door creaked beneath your weight. We left the courtyard then, the rhythmic rumble of waterfall smothering our footsteps. The attendants would awaken soon, but we would return before we were missed, in time for our morning class. Where are we going? She asked, as we crossed the gardens of the inner court. Have you been to Crystal Snow Mountain? I have only been to the places you've taken me to. Her teeth sank into her lip as though trying to bite back those words. Where were you before? I asked, despite knowing she was reluctant to speak of her past. Whatever happened had hurt her deeply, its wounds still raw. Far from here. It was isolated, small. You would not have gone there. The halting way she spoke stirred my emotions. It was tempting to sweep aside the remaining barriers, to ask for her trust and the responsibility it would entail. But I did not, afraid of what she might divulge, of how it might change things. What if it drove a wedge between us? What if I was forced to send her away? I would rather wait until she was ready to share her secrets, or until I could better safeguard her from any threat. Where is this mountain? She asked. Close to the shores of the northern sea. It's not far. The northern sea? She frowned. Did they not aid the demons in the war? We are on civil terms with them now. Moreover, we won't be trespassing into their domain. The mountain lies within celestial territory, I assured her. We entered a deserted courtyard by the outer walls of the palace, the one we'd used before to leave unseen. Here the grass brushed our knees, the pavilion roof was weathered, its wooden pillars pitted and warm, an unusual sight when everything else in the palace was so immaculately tended. Yet it was better for us that it remained forgotten. Xingyan stood still as I cast the enchantment to shield our auras, summoning a wind to bear us over the wall upon a waiting cloud. As we flew into the sky, the first shafts of the morning sun fell over us with a gentle warmth. Calm filled me, yet I never felt so alive. Why did you want to go to the mountain today? She asked. Today is the summer solstice in the mortal realm, when the snow ginseng berries ripen. While the ginseng itself is a sacred plant that cannot be harvested, its berries and seeds are given freely for planting. My gaze slid to hers. If you pay more attention in class, you would know this. She wrinkled her nose. Our tutor in herbology was not a favorite of hers. He was stern and arrogant, nor had he ever forgiven her for almost falling asleep during his first class. These are important lessons, even though the subject may not seem interesting or exciting as General Jianyin's. I reminded her. Nature is everywhere. With it, we are never wholly defenseless. You might lose your weapon in battle, an enemy might seize it from you, but you can always find a useful plant if you know what you're looking for. She grinned. What if you pluck the wrong herb? One that strengthens instead of weakens your foe? That is why we study, I reminded her pointedly. What is special about the snow ginseng root? Does it grant some great power? Strengthens one's life force? It has a potent effect on soothing one's mind and spirit, a useful aid to meditation. She glanced at me. Why would you want this? I did not. This excursion was not about the route, but the desire to see more of the realm with her, an excuse to leave the palace. My parents like to collect rare items. It might be useful one day, was what I said instead. She nodded somberly. Your mother might find such an item of particular use. I cleared my throat, burying a laugh. My mother's temper was renowned, and unfortunately, Xingyan had borne the brunt of it more than once. I will be sure to offer the ginseng root to her once it has matured. She raised her face, basking in the warmth of the sun. I am glad to be out. We hear so many wondrous places. I want to see as many as I can. What is the point of life if not to live it? I agreed. And there is no better moment than the present, while my time is my own. She swung to me seemingly startled. What do you mean? Once I come of age, I will assume my official responsibilities. I will have to attend court. I spoke reluctantly, not wanting to think about our time together ending. If I no longer attended the classes, there would be no need for a study companion. While I could find another place for her, even if I had to create one, these carefree days would be a remnant of the past. At least I'll be able to leave the palace at will without the need for subterfuge, I added. As long as the guards don't report your whereabouts to your parents, she said with a smile. I grinned. We'll just have to bribe them better. In the horizon, the waters of the northern sea rippled in shades of aquamarine. Our clouds swerved upward, soaring higher. The air turned colder as the snow-covered mountain loomed before us. We flew toward it, landing at the peak. All was white and silver. Even the grass seemed frosted over. A stream cut across the plain, its waters possessed of an iridescent sheen. Just a short distance away was a crystal dais, upon which a plant grew. Its leaves spread wide like a fan. Clusters of berries sprouted from its center, gleaming like rubies. Xingyan, be careful. We must only pluck the berries. Don't touch anything else. Not even the leaves, else the plants will think it's being threatened, I warned. Think? She repeated, her voice lifting in doubt. This plant is one of the greatest ancients, older than the kingdom itself. While it may not think the same way as us, its instincts are honed to precision. It could kill us with ease, should we give it cause. My eyes narrowed. Did you listen to anything in that class? Nothing whatsoever, she declared, raising her hands, though I promised to start. The wind leapt, blowing loose strands of hair across her cheek. My hand reached out to brush them away, but I forced it down, stepping from the cloud abruptly. As we headed toward the dais, she kept pace beside me with her long strides. Bending to inspect the ginseng, she gestured for me to come closer. I moved toward her, careful to maintain a discreet distance. Part of me wanted to touch her hand, to feel the warmth of her skin, yet my guard was up. I shifted my attention to the plant instead, the alleged reason for our excursion. The soil here was formed of shining grains, almost translucent. Silken tendrils sprang from the ginseng's plump stem, gleaming like they were spun from silver. The root only glows like this when its berries ripen, I told her. It's beautiful. Perhaps we can grow one just like it. Unlikely. This is the only root of its kind. Its offspring will possess strong magical properties, but the core of its power lies with the parent. Is it dangerous? She asked. If it falls into the wrong hands? It guards itself well. Besides, its power is not the type that will raise or destroy kingdoms. There is no reason to covet it other than for its beauty and healing properties. It would be wicked indeed to harm something that only offers joy and peace to others. Unkindness often has no reason, she murmured. Before I could ask her meaning, she glanced at the sky, now bright blue. We should return soon. Our first class is with General Jian Yun, and he will not tolerate lateness. I nodded, reaching for a cluster of berries just as she did. Our hands collided, heat flaring across my skin. As we broke apart, her face reddened. I rebuked myself for such foolishness. Why did her touch affect me now, when it never had before? Steadying myself, I stretched out again to pluck a berry. It fell away in my hand, searing cold. My fingers trembled, brushing against the leaf. Thorns erupted from the stem of the plant, sprouting like silver pins. The ground shook beneath our feet as light surged from the dais. A moment before, the ginseng root swelled, its tendrils thickening as they burst through the earth. grown monstrous like the tentacles of some great sea creature. The blades of grass around us sprung up like tips of daggers, impossible to cross. "We must flee. Summon a cloud!" Xingyan's voice was firm yet urgent, her gaze sweeping over the perils that encircled us. Cloud summoning was something she was still learning, one of the few things that came slower to her because of her initial fears. My energy flowed to seize a cloud from the heavens, imbuing it with magic. As we scrambled upon it, a tendril from the ginseng lashed at us, its thorns scraping my sleeve, digging into my flesh. Another whipped across Xingyan's face, drawing a thin trail of blood. I cursed, but she did not flinch. Raising her hand, the lights of her energy scattered like rain, forming an enchantment. A wind roared to life, fiercer than any I might have conjured. As it bore us higher, another thick tendril of plant sprang up, winding around my ankle. Thorns pierced my skin, scratching my leg. I pushed the pain from my mind, flames streaming from my hands to burn it away. Even as Xingyan moved swiftly, a dagger in her hand, she slashed at the root with deft strokes, cutting it apart. The hard light in her eyes was the same intense expression as when she let an arrow fly. "Are you hurt, Liwei?" She bent to inspect my arm, using her sleeve to clean my wound, even as blood trickled down her cut cheek. I did not reply, raising my fingers to my face. My magic flowed into her, knitting the torn flesh together seamlessly. We were fortunate to have suffered no more than these scrapes, but the incident had left me shaken. I was careless. I didn't mean for this to happen. A clumsy apology, if it could be called one at all. It was not something I was accustomed to offering. As she smiled at me, my heart quickened. "I thought you intended this as our morning exercise." "Perhaps next time." "Next time I might not get out of bed," she warned, turning to examine the devastation we'd left on the mountain. "Did we damage the root? I had to cut its tendrils to escape." "Are you concerned for it after it tried to flay us?" I asked, partly in disbelief. "It did not ask for our presence, nor the chaos we caused," she replied gravely. "The core of the ginseng remains unharmed. If injured in any way, it can heal itself," I assured her. Her expression lightened. "Shall we plant the seed tomorrow?" "You may have the honor," I offered. "The only honor I want is to sleep in." She yawned, covering her mouth, and despite everything we'd just encountered, her heavy-lidded eyes stirred an unfamiliar heat inside me. Did she look this way when she awoke in the morning? My treacherous mind wondered. A dangerous thought, forbidden, that perhaps one day I would see her waking beside me, disheveled, with the very expression on her face. As my chest twinged, I turned away. "After today, you should be the one to get your hands soiled," Xingyan said with a laugh. "Let's hope the one we plant has more placid disposition than its parent." I laughed along with her, the strange tension within me dissipating. She evoked such conflicting emotions in me. I wanted to shield her, and yet felt safer when she was near. As I gazed into her upturned face, the remaining barriers around my heart fell away, the part of me I had always held back. I would never forget my duty, but why should I ignore my heart? There was little use in denying these feelings. They were a part of me too. To ignore their existence, to obscure and suppress them, might be the greater loss. The future was rife with possibilities. Perhaps Xingyan might grow accustomed to life in the palace, or I might be able to choose my own future. Perhaps these emotions would fade of their own accord. For now, I would let the current bear me down a new path. To yield to these awakening sensations, I would reach for the joy before me, keep it close, for each moment was precious, a rare enchantment itself, and as powerful as any magic.